Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday Coffee Talk. We're back here this morning to talk to you some more about mask wearing. Last week, we had a conversation about the guidance that recently came out regarding school opening in the fall. And while there's not a lot of information surrounding what that's going to look like and what we're going to be doing, one thing is pretty clear. The guidance continues to say that mask wearing is in our future and is going to be around for, is here and in our future, and is going to be around for a long time. So we have to wear masks, or we should be wearing masks, and we should be encouraging kids who are going to be going to school to start wearing masks now so that they're ready for when they go back to school and they're going to have to wear masks in school. So last week we talked a little bit about what does that look like? What kinds of masks do you get? How do you get kids motivated to wear masks? How do you get them to wear them for longer periods of time? And I think one thing that we took away from that is that there are kids of varying abilities who have to wear masks. And there are a lot of kids out there who are going to struggle with even just having something that close to their face like that. And they may not understand why they have to wear the mask or what it means to wear the mask. And so today we want to focus a little bit more on increasing tolerance for mask wearing and increasing the length of time that kids can wear a mask. And we're really focusing on those kids who struggle with, if they have difficulty understanding why they have to wear the masks or what the masks are for. How do we get kids to tolerate those? And so today we're going to talk a little bit more clinically about mask wearing and how to increase tolerance. And one thing that I really want to make clear is, we're going to show you some strategies to use to increase tolerance for wearing masks. In no way, shape, or form would we ever say that anybody should hold a mask on a child or restrain a child to wear a mask. What our goal is to give you some strategies to try to slowly build up the tolerance so that wearing a mask isn't so aversive or scary. So I just wanted to kind of say that before we get started, even though I think everybody's going to be saying that throughout. So I'm going to get started and have Katie talk a little bit. Katie, I'm going to share my screen so that you can review the first document.
Yep. And while Liz is setting it up, this document was actually created pretty early on in the pandemic by our internal ABA consultation group. For a lot of the folks that live in our group homes. And when we took a look at it, we saw that it really was relevant to our children as well. So ways to encourage individuals, and in our case, children, to tolerate PPE. And for us, we're really focusing on the masks because we don't have too many situations where, we're having the children have to handle full PPE gear. So when we're looking at masks, one of the most important things is to offer a variety of colors, textures, and ways to secure. So initially, I think when the masks came out, it was pretty basic. You got the general disposable masks that only had the option of the behind the ear. But now, like I showed last week, there's the neck gaiter. There's ones that you can tie in the back instead. And so as much as you can, I would offer choice. But when you are providing that choice, I would have it really vary and look at how your child is tolerating each of the masks. Are they trying to take it off? Are they pushing it away? Are they okay with it? And those are signs that are really going to help you decide whether or not the mask is more preferable than an other. So some of the signs would be trying to take it off, like I said, trying to remove it from somebody else. So if you are wearing the mask in the home, is your child trying to take it off of you? And then if you're seeing some behaviors that maybe you're not seeing in other cases, like crying or aggression, or not wanting to do tasks that are typical or routine when you are wearing a mask or somebody else is wearing a mask. And that's when you want to ask for help. But for those of you at home who are kind of doing this on your own, we do have some guidance and some strategies that you can do without necessarily, a behavior analyst in your back pocket. So this is the data sheet that they created, which I think is wonderful because it gives you a good idea of which masks are most likely to be preferred, and in that case, most likely to be worn for an extended period of time. So in this case, you could see that the team tried 4 different types of masks with this particular person. And one of those masks was tolerated for 7 minutes, and it happened to be the soft multicolor fabric mask with elastic ties. So that just kind of shows that before moving forward and trying to extend the time, that soft multicolor mask might be the one that they want to stick with. And I know it can be a little bit costly, but if we're looking at something that your child's going to have to wear long term, I think that little bit of an investment to find one that's a right fit is going to end up being worth it in the long run. And then these are some tips for before you even ask your child to put a mask on. So you can, and I think we'll get to this after, but I would almost say put a mask on yourself and show them. Have a conversation about why it's important to wear a mask. And I think we did post some social stories last week that we can refer to, but that really outline why it's important to wear a mask. And there's a ton out there now that go from very, very basic to pretty detailed. So I think that those are some good resources. But one thing is just to show what they look like. Like Lisa mentioned last week, some of the kids are really into superheroes. So wearing a mask, you know, you're a superhero. And I know, Liz, I think you've made a reference to calling your kids superheroes because they're helping other people when they're wearing a mask. So kind of spinning it so that it's something positive is a good way, but letting them see themselves. One thing is putting a cloth mask on a favorite stuffed animal they can carry around, and maybe they can wear a mask at the same time. Decorating masks so they're more personalized and fun. If you could find a plain colored one and some fabric markers, that's something that a student or a child can do on their own. And then just really exposure. I know before showing pictures is a good way. For my daughters personally, we also just kind of took some drives, and when the restaurants started opening outside or when people were in line outside somewhere, and they just kind of started to see that out in public people are wearing masks. So that it wasn't such a shell shock the first time we took them. Here's Spider-Man wearing a mask. So I think kind of normalizing it as much as possible, like we talked about last week, is the way to do it. And I would do this in small doses at first, but then kind of increasing the amount of time that you're exposing. Kind of if you're watching TV, maybe your stuffed animal is wearing the mask next to you or something like that. And then anytime that you are asking your child to wear a mask, I would pair it, or, you know, we're going to put on a preferred movie or show. If it's possible, save a preferred activity to be used only when they're wearing a mask. So if there's a certain iPad game that they really, really like, maybe that's they're playing it and you offer it only when they're wearing the mask, so that they start to think that the mask is paired with something great. So it's not as aversive, or it's not something that they're going to want to take off right away. You know, that could be music. And then you want to give them some extra attention. Like Liz said, call them a superhero, you know, just kind of point out that they're wearing a mask, and that's really great. And you're also not going to want to ask your child to do anything that's difficult. So don't ask for chores or don't present work or things like that when they're wearing the mask, especially at first, because you don't want it to be paired with something that they don't like doing. And then in the beginning, they did recommend wearing a reusable mask at first. And that's going to be a lot of on and off, and probably would eliminate some of the washing that has to go on in between. And then we're going to use shaping. So shaping is just kind of reinforcing and kind of increasing little tiny bits of time that your child is wearing the mask. And we'll get into a couple of protocols that outline exactly how to do that. But just in general, once you have figured out which mask you want to move forward with, you want to figure out how long your child will wear the mask before trying to take it off or pushing it away. And then you'll set a timer for a little bit more than that time. And if they are successful, then you're going to praise them. And praise can be whatever it needs to be. It can be, for some students, a high five or wow, way to go. For others, it might need to be something more tangible. It might need to be a little reward from a prize box or time on the iPad, things like that. And if they're successful, next time you're going to increase the duration again, and then you're slowly just going to increase it. And so I would just want to kind of, when you want to start this process, just keep in mind when you're going to expect your child? When are you going to be going out somewhere where they have to wear it for an hour? And then you really want to start well in advance so that you're prepared. Because this could take, if you're working at 5 seconds at a time or 10 seconds at a time, this could take weeks until they're really ready to go out and wear it for a trip to the grocery store or to wear it for school. So I would start wearing it now if you're even just planning for the fall for school. And then,
okay, and then Michelle is going to run us through. Oh no, you're going to run us through another protocol, Katie, right? Before Michelle does.
Yep. It's that middle one.
Okay. I swear I practiced figuring out which one to pick.
So many things.
All right, go ahead, Katie.
Thank you. So this is a protocol that was created by one of our BCBAs in Watertown. And if you're looking at the step-by-step, what you can see is that we're starting very, very basic. So we're not even putting the mask on to begin with. And before I kind of even get into the steps, I want to emphasize, like Liz did at the beginning, you could use a hand over hand to kind of show how to put the mask on, but at no point would we recommend holding the mask. That's going to be completely counterproductive. It's number one, that's really affecting the dignity of your child, and they're clearly telling you that they don't want to do something, but also they're then going to pair the mask as something that's really not fun. So I wouldn't force it. This is a great time if you're working on functional communication training to teach your child. Maybe you teach them before they even put it on. If you wanted to take it off, just say all done, or say no mask. Kind of teach them some sort of response to give you that lets you know that they don't want to wear it anymore. And especially in the beginning, you're going to want to honor that. If you're out in public, then you could kind of start to stretch it and say, okay, let's go to the bathroom so you can take it off for a little while, or something like that. But this is a good time to teach them how to advocate for themselves to take it off. So for this particular student, I don't know the student, but I'm guessing that wearing a mask was something that was really non-preferred for them. So you could see step one is just holding the mask to the face and just putting it on, and then taking it off. And that might take quite a few trials before you're going to want to move on. And then you put on one earpiece at a time. And again, this would probably be, 2 to 5 seconds at a time before you even start putting the whole mask on. And for some children, I think this is as basic as you're going to need to start. And if you want to scroll down. Yep. So then they just kind of, once the face mask is on and they're not holding it, then it's 10 seconds. And then you're just going to start to increase it. And then Michelle has another example of one of the protocols that our staff in Naugatuck are using for a student as well.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So I think before I go in, I think, Katie, you brought up some really good points. And so this protocol was developed by some of our BCBAs over at the Naugatuck Learning Academy. And some of the things that they've been doing, some of those prerequisites that you were talking about were, letting the student hold the mask to feel it, to touch it, but kind of avoid playing with it so that it doesn't kind of get that, we're not tying that to playing with it. It's more just to touch it and see how it feels. Also allowing the student to touch it while it's on another space. So if a parent is wearing a mask, you can have your child touch the mask on your face to see how it feels. And family members can wear it around the house too, to increase exposure and just see what it looks like. And I know that when we were kind of doing these protocols, everyone in the session is wearing a mask too. So the student kind of gets used to it and sees that everyone is wearing a mask. Other things that they kind of brought up were, just kind of pairing it with a reinforcing activity, kind of what you said, Katie, before kind of going into this protocol is, as a parent, you can wear it and pair it with a positive voice, or playing games while wearing masks. I know one of our BCBAs for her daughter is playing peekaboo with her daughter while she wears a mask. So she's kind of pairing it with a reinforcing and fun activity. And the other thing that they said to just, before we kind of go into this protocol, you could also increase experiences with other objects on the face. So wearing sunglasses or wearing a hat, kind of increasing exposure to other objects on the face, so that that student or that child gets used to wearing those things on the face and gets comfortable with exposure to items on their face. So what this protocol, how this protocol works is we kind of collect baseline data, meaning we see how long the student can kind of leave the mask on their face. And we put the mask on, and as soon as they get uncomfortable or show any sort of behavior, we take it off and we say, okay, how long was a student able to leave the mask on their face? Again, just like Katie said, we don't want the student to, if they have any sort of behaviors, we kind of take the mask off and we just see how long it was until they had any of those sort of behaviors. Sometimes that baseline or that first exposure to the mask might be longer than any sort of subsequent exposure to the mask. So I know we had one student that was able at first to keep it on for 15 seconds, but then they kind of started at 15 seconds and then it was harder for that child to kind of keep the mask on. So they lowered the time. So they just started at 5 seconds, keeping the mask on. And when they took it off, they totally reinforced it. So doing anything that was exciting for that child after. That child really likes clapping. So everyone in the session clapped for that student and reinforced it. Great job. But it could be anything after you kind of have that mask on the child that's reinforcing for them. So it could be an edible, it could be playing a game, anything that's reinforcing. So we want to make sure that there's positivity associated with keeping the mask on. So we just want to make sure that, once we can kind of estimate how long the child can put the mask on at first, but that might change. So we can just be mindful of that. So if we start at 5 seconds and then we kind of looked at how many times can that student or that child keep on the mask. So the graph here, the data collection sheet here shows that we introduced it on May 11th, and they kind of did it once per day. So, and you can do it as often as you'd like and collect data on that too, and just see how long the child is able to and how many times you can do it. And we kind of set it as 5 consecutive opportunities for keeping the mask on before you move on to keeping it on for longer. So we started at 5 seconds, and once we collected 5 consecutive days of keeping the mask on, or 5 consecutive opportunities, we moved on to 10 seconds. And it really depends on
And Michelle, just not to interrupt you, but that's not a hard and fast rule, right? So I think for people who may want to try to do this, you kind of determine how many times where you're confident that you can kind of increase it and you're going to get success, right? So 5 consecutive days, not necessarily a hard and fast rule.
Absolutely. It definitely depends on the student. It might take longer for the student to kind of get used to that at that amount of time, or it might be very quick. And again, the 5 seconds isn't a hard and fast. It could be longer. It could even be a little bit shorter. It's totally dependent on the student, and you can kind of increase the time for wherever that child is at. So we just take it from where the child is most comfortable, and we increase it from there. So once that child has mastered that time, we've slowly increased it. So moving from 5 seconds to 10 seconds to 15, again, not hard and fast, and dependent on the child. If you feel like, going from 10 to 20, and you can kind of collect that data. And if that was a big jump, then you can bring it back down. Going from 10 to 15, that's totally fine. We just want to increase the exposure just to get them used to wearing the mask. And like we were saying before, if they have to wear it for longer periods of time at school, we just want to make sure that we're getting that comfort level. So anywhere you start is where the child's at, and you can kind of test that out at baseline and putting it on.
Great. All right. Any comments or anything else on that before I stop the share? Nope. All right. Okay. So that just gives a little bit of, a couple of different ways and strategies, well, lots of different great strategies to use when trying to increase tolerance to wearing masks, increase the amount of time that a child is going to wear the mask. Again, I think one thing that's really important that I think kind of we've all been saying across the board is now's the time to start, particularly if we're thinking about school starting in September or end of August, September. Then it doesn't leave us a lot of time to build up the amount of time needed for wearing these masks. And of course, again, we have to be flexible. We have to take the kids where they are and work from there. And I think that's, and have patience with the kids and have patience with yourselves, because this is not an easy thing, particularly for children who don't like to have anything near their face. As Michelle was saying, I really liked what you said, Michelle, about tolerating anything on the face, sunglasses, other things too, in addition, just to have that, to increase that tolerance overall.
Well, I think for some of those students too, Liz, I think for some children, the face shield might be a little bit less aversive, or they might tolerate it because it's not covering their entire mouth. It's worn more like a hat, and they're not really having that barrier on the face.
And with you saying that too, made me think of something else that I think that once kind of this teaching is done and we're able to get kids to wear masks for longer periods of time, what we know is going to happen to Chrissy's TikTok video that she wanted to show, that with a face shield or with a face mask, we're definitely going to see an increase of fiddling with the mask and playing with it and pulling it and twirling it or whatever. And so we have to also start thinking about what is our tolerance for kind of that fidgeting during instruction. What are we going to let go of, and what are we going to kind of try to move kids away from as we move on. Kids are kids. They're going to play with those with that. I mean, it's very difficult to have something on your face without kind of fiddling with it. But I think that that's something to really consider too moving forward. We will share some of these resources. If you are looking for or interested in other resources or have other questions about some of these protocols that or strategies that we talked about this morning, just shoot us an email at info@ippi.org and we'd be happy, or put a comment. We'd be happy to share what we have or have a conversation about it. We know that this is not easy. We're doing our best to follow the guidance and get us closer to a successful start of the fall for schools reopening. And this is one way that we can, that if we know that kids can have this tolerance to wearing a mask, we're one step closer to having a successful opening for going back to school. So with that said, we will share some of these resources, and we hope that you found some of these strategies helpful and moving forward. As for us on Coffee Talk, we are going to be taking the next few weeks off of Coffee Talk to kind of regroup as we're setting our plans for the fall for reopening for the Learning Academy and for our school partnership programs. And as we do that, we're going to be kind of building our stash of strategies to share later on in the summer. So keep an eye out. We'll let you know when we will be back on for Coffee Talk Tuesdays, but we are going to be hiatus for the month of July, and we'll be back with you in August. And if we don't have any other comments from the rest of the panel, then we are done for today, and we look forward to talking with you all very soon.